It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Our conversation with Travis M. Andrews, the author of Because He's Jeff Goldblum, is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Travis, good morning. It's so good to have you with us here today. I got to ask you, man, how did you strike upon this thing, this Jeff Goldblum character? He's such a fun guy. He's such... I know you've heard the word eccentric about us 7 zillion times, but what made you want to write this?
You know, it started with a jazz album, which I don't think is what probably most people expect. Back in 2016, Jeff Goldblum was releasing his first jazz record, and I didn't even know Jeff Goldblum played jazz at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I work at the Washington Post in the style section, and I was talking to my colleagues about Jeff Goldblum, and I kind of said offhandedly, it's so interesting to me that this guy who was, an A-list actor in the 90s, today feels ubiquitous, particularly online. Everyone seems to love him. Everyone seems to know him. But it's not like he's in a ton of movies lately. A couple, Thor, Ragnarok, Grand Budapest Hotel. But, we're far from the days of Jurassic Park and Independence Day. And my colleagues all responded kind of as a chorus. They were like, because he's Jeff Goldblum. Like, shouldn't it be self-evident? So I wrote a piece about how people seem to love Jeff Goldblum so much these days, and the piece kind of focused on how the internet has really changed the nature of celebrity and fame to allow someone like him or Chris Walken or Bill Murray to kind of remain in the spotlight even when they're not necessarily in giant movies. And then I got fascinated with the guy, and I started watching all of his movies and listening to all of his music, and I thought he was just such an interesting character who says something bigger about the world that I thought maybe there's a book in it, and then I guess I wrote one.
But it's interesting you mentioned Murray and Walken because they, and I think especially Jeff Goldblum, we sort of look at them and we get an idea that they know something we don't know, don't they?
I think that's dead on. They sense some part of the world that we're all kind of grasping at, but they see it, and I don't know how or why that is. They just kind of are so fully themselves that they see something more. I don't know.
It's really amazing. And it was born, as he was, right here in our area, in Pittsburgh, in West Homestead, Jeff Goldblum, and his parents, the way you describe his parents and the way they brought him up, it was very Goldblumian.
No, absolutely. He grew up in a big old house over on Linwood Drive, and his dad has always been described as being a little tough, and his mom, meanwhile, was kind of more into the hippie scene. She maybe would vacuum in the nude sometimes, maybe grow some recreational plants out in the backyard to enjoy. But they were both really into the arts, and they really instilled the arts in their children, sending Jeff to painting classes, to acting classes, to bringing him to plays, and bringing him up to New York to see Broadway, and really instilled this love of art in him, which I think, was kind of what created Jeff Goldblum when he was a teenager. He always says he used to write on the bathroom mirror with a finger after it fogged up, please God, let me be an actor every day, and then erase it. It's kind of his own little secret passion.
We're talking with Travis M. Andrews this morning. I should give the full title of the book, subtitle and all. Because He's Jeff Goldblum, The Movies, Memes, and Meaning of Hollywood's Most Enigmatic Actor. And certainly he is that. But one of the things that really struck me about the book, Travis, is you examine this very well. Jeff Goldblum really, really loves the art of acting and really works hard at it, even as effortless as it sounds.
Absolutely. He studied under the legendary acting coach Sanford Meisner when he got to New York. At 17, he had to lie about his age to get into the class because he wasn't old enough. And I think that was probably the most formative experience in Goldblum's life, in teaching him how to act, but also how to love acting. Sanford Meisner famously said that acting is living truthfully in fictional or imaginary circumstances. And he really takes it to heart. And his other big lesson is that you're only interesting to the point that you're interested. And Goldblum seems so fascinated with other people, which I think is really important for an actor. You have to not only be empathetic, but be curious. And I think that he took those lessons not only on screen or on stage, but he took them into life itself. And I think that's one reason why we like him so much. all these years later.
You know, you didn't mean it this way, but when you talked about how he's so curious about people and other actors, the baboon story that you tell in this book, I think illustrates what you just said.
Yes, so the baboon story. That is probably my favorite story in the book. And basically, on the set of The Fly, there was a baboon. And baboons are not by nature very nice creatures often, and they can be pretty dangerous. They have 2 to 3 inch long fangs. They're obviously very strong, and if you get a baboon in a bad mood, you might be in a little trouble. Now, I spoke to the script supervisor on The Fly, and she told me that I guess the baboon's former owner or trainer or whatnot looked a lot like her. And when the baboon saw said script supervisor, the baboon became, shall we say, romantically interested and would go into heat and would kind of lose its mind and be screeching and screaming, and no one could calm this baboon down, which obviously is a problem because you need to have him in the movie, and he's on a movie set, except for Jeff Goldblum, who somehow learned about baboons and learned how to calm this baboon down, and that was the only way they were able to continue shooting. And what's particularly funny to me is that's not even the only baboon story I heard from Goldblum. He was in this movie called Threshold in, I think, 81 that also had a baboon on set that he kind of befriended. So, friend of the baboon, Mr. Jeff Goldblum.
Well, the movie you just mentioned, The Fly, is, of course, a seminal moment for Jeff Goldblum in his acting career and the way people perceive Jeff Goldblum and his abilities. Affable guy, pretty talented, and people could see that all along. Nobody expected Jeff Goldblum as The Fly to be what Jeff Goldblum became. It was really a turning point, was it not, for him?
Absolutely. For, I think, several different reasons. One, that's a little bit just more aesthetic. He, before The Fly, was not really in great shape. He was skinny, kind of tall, lanky, and he used that a lot in movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Between the Lines, Next Stop Greenwich Village, to his advantage. But for The Fly, because he's turning into this creature that's very strong, he would work out all the time. In fact, everyone on the set, I think, lost like 10 to 20 pounds because they all were inspired, and so everyone was just working out all the time. But so we get this kind of new body on Jeff Goldblum. We get this deeper level of acting because he's in a role that, frankly, I still think should have won an Oscar. I think it's an incredibly affecting role. And we get this kind of new, serious Jeff Goldblum that launches him into some of the A-list blockbusters that we see in the 90s.
It's just an amazing career when you stop and look at it. And by the way, I love Silverado. And I love Jeff Goldblum in it. I think he's terrific in it. But that of course, is not what we know Jeff Goldblum for. He has so many what turned into iconic movie roles that we really, until we read your book, Travis, until we read your book, we really don't understand or realize how big Jeff Goldblum has been, but how much bigger he could have been had he really, really wanted that. But it seems like Jeff Goldblum has always had an idea of what he's wanted, and we don't really know exactly what that is, but he seems to have found it.
Yeah, he seems, and I think one reason why people respond to him so well is because he seems like he is, and I say this in the book, truly authentic in the sense that he kind of followed his own muse and did what interested him rather than chasing fame and chasing celebrity. Because after his run of The Fly, Jurassic Park, which made more money than any movie had ever made at that time, Independence Day, The Lost World, which I believe broke more box office records, when you're at that level, you can do anything you want. And rather than continue doing A-list movies, he played jazz music at a small club in L.A. every week. And he starred in movies like Igby Goes Down and Deep Cover and these kind of indie movies that are really interesting. They don't all work, but you could tell he was exploring different venues and just kind of whatever idea interested him, going over to London and starring in the Pillow Man with Billy Crudup, the Martin Madonna play. I just find that utterly fascinating because I don't think we see that very often with actors, particularly ones of his stature.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you got to take some roles in there to pay some bills too. And he did that, and he's quite frank about that as well. When you were doing this book, I'm sure that you were you ran across some folks who just absolutely had great killer stories about Jeff Goldblum that you said, man, that's fantastic. I wish I could use that.
Absolutely. So many great stories. I think I always think of Harry Shearer's stories, which I think is in chapter 5 or 6. The Simpsons actor and the legendary comedian who starred with Jeff. Well, not starred. He and Jeff were in The Right Stuff together as comedic relief, and they got to the set, which they then learned was an active aircraft carrier that they were going to be brought to, and there wasn't a place for them to sleep. They hadn't booked them a room or anything, and so they were going to have them sleep on the aircraft carrier. And Harry was like, Jeff and I looked at each other and we're like, no, we cannot do this. So they, Phil Kaufman, the director, ended up offering to have them stay at his house, which they did.
Do you have a life-size Jeff Goldblum anywhere in your home?
I don't know. I don't know if I should admit this, but I absolutely do. My girlfriend's father bought me one as a present and did not tell me, and my girlfriend set it up in the kitchen and did not tell me. So I come home one day, and when you walk into my place, you don't see the kitchen at first. You kind of have your back to it. And so I was talking to my girlfriend, and then at some point, I turn around and I scream like a child because Jeff Goldblum is just standing in my kitchen, and so I've kept the cutout ever since. And every once in a while, I like to prop it up in my front window that looks onto the U.S. Capitol and have Jeff Goldblum just kind of looking out on democracy.
I'm not going to ask you if you take Jeff Goldblum with you when you leave the home, because that would just be too weird.
No comment.
He is Travis M. Andrews. The book is Because He's Jeff Goldblum, the movies, memes, and meaning of Hollywood's most enigmatic actor. Travis, where are we going to learn more?
TravisMAndrews.com has everything that you need to know.
Beautiful. It's a great book. It's a fun read. Hey, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. You too.